Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 41 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010. Impact begins with a recap of last week's show, focus on the main event which saw wrestling's greatest tag team outlast three other teams, putting themselves in prime contention for a shot at the Motor City Machine Guns and the World Tag Team Championships, more importantly at No Surrender. On that show, Kurt Angle will defend his World Heavyweight Championship against long-term rival Samoa Joe, and Madison Rayne will reluctantly face Awesome Kong in her Knockouts Championship rematch. There's still a couple of weeks before that show, and Maro and Tad introduce us to this week's episode, promoting a huge main event as AJ Styles and Kurt Angle face the combustible duo of Desmond Wolfe and Samoa Joe. We have Jazz vs Tara as our opener for the show, but before then, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin are the first members of the roster to make their way down to the ring. They won last week's main event. They seemingly have something to say, but as they reach halfway down the ramp, they are jumped from behind by Beer Money. A brutal attack follows, which sees Charlie Haas thrown into the steel steps before both James Storm and Robert Roode drive Shelton Benjamin shoulder first into the ring post. Both men are in severe pain, and Benjamin in particular requires urgent medical attention. Maranello confirms that WGTT were out to make their No Surrender match with Motor City Machine Guns official, but that'll have to be put on hold. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin eventually come out to check on wrestling's greatest tag team, but Beer Money are long gone by this point. There'll be no retaliation towards them. Medics then help Haas and Benjamin to their feet and continue to talk with them as they head up the ramp, so both of them are able to walk away, but from the way Shelton's speaking, it appears that he is in severe discomfort. We then go or come back from a break and into that first match, where Tara defeats Jazz, but not how she would have wanted to. She gets some revenge because she's definitely showing some intensity in the match. She goes for the Widow's Peak, but Jazz rolls out the ring, jumps the guardrail. She doesn't have a family in the crowd this time, so her only option is to leave. She walks out through the crowd, no intention of continuing to fight Tara. This obviously frustrates the former Knockouts champion, and as Jazz leaves through the crowd, much like she did following her victory at Hard Justice, Alyssa Flash and Mischief appear from the back. Last week, Tara defeated Mischief, and the Knockouts Tag Team Champions clearly aren't happy about this. However, before they reach the ring, Daphne and Roxy follow them out, confronting them. They were defeated at Hard Justice, but they are not done with the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, and they begin to brawl with the duo. Shortly after it begins, the New Age begin to get the upper hand. In terms of our roster, we've definitely presented Flash and Mischief as being better than Daphne and Roxy, and this shows during the segment until the beautiful people come out. They surprisingly help DNI get rid of Alyssa Flash and Mischief, leading to the outnumbered Knockouts Tag Team Champions escaping while they can, heading up the ramp. They don't want a 4-on-2 fight. The beautiful people helping DNI. You couldn't find two more different groups of people, and you can see that there's an almost dirty feeling. They don't feel right to have helped Daphne and Roxy, but the beautiful people did do that. The awkward moment is only added to by Tara, who stood in the ring, and she just looks as confused as everybody else. We'd imagine that there's something more to it. Daphne, I should have turned face. I'll definitely do it before the pay-per-view, so not too much to worry about there. Heading to the back, Lauren Brooke looks for an update on the condition of wrestling's greatest tag team, but when the door to the trainer's room opens, it's only Charlie Haas who leaves. Haas says that he's feeling fine, albeit a little bit sore, but things aren't so great for Shelton. He's still being assessed, but whatever the outcome, Charlie tells Beer Money that when they get the opportunity, they're coming for revenge. They still want the tag team championships from Motor City Machine Guns, but there's certainly a personal thread coming now between them and Beer Money. We then head elsewhere to another interview segment. Desmond Wolfe spoken to by Jeremy Borash, and he bemoans the fact that he has to team with Samoa Joe in tonight's main event. First of all, whoever made that decision needs their head testing, and whoever thinks he's anything like Samoa Joe needs their eyes testing. That's a reference to AJ saying that last week. But Wolf doesn't care about any of that tonight. He's not focused on partners or allies. He's just going to beat the hell out of AJ Styles, then beat the hell out of the world champion. And if he has time at the end of the night, he might just beat the hell out of Samoa Joe as well, for old time's sake. So a decent segment. 71's basically what most of these 2-minute promos get. Improvising well though, while losing heat to the storyline. We then get the match that was announced on Explosion last week and proposed by Larry Sweeney previously. It is Austin Creed and Kazuchika Okada versus Eric Young and Jay Lethal, and if Larry Sweeney's clients win, both men will get a shot at Jay Lethal at No Surrender, Austin Creed getting the Global Championship shot and Kazuchika Okada getting the X Division Championship shot, and they do actually pick up the victory. Of course, Larry at ringside will be getting involved here and there, but it's nothing decisive that you'd actually say it was much of a tainted finish. It's simply that Austin Creed rolls up Jay Lethal, pinning him for the 1-2-3. We're really pushing at the minute that there's a lot on the plate of Jay Lethal, and that pressure may well have taken his eye off the ball in that match. Two good performances from Lethal and Eric Young, equally average performances from Okada and Austin Creed, but they are two guys we're trying to build into stars, and hopefully them both getting pay-per-view matches at No Surrender will help with that. Of course, Jay Lethal has Abyss on his case, he has Mr. Anderson on his case, he has Larry Sweeney, Creed and Okada on his case, so while it's not good for him to be pinned here, and I could easily have just made Eric Young take the fall, I wanted to really put over that Lethal is struggling due to the fact that there is just people coming from all angles. If you want to be a double champion, that's what you've got to expect. Austin Creed and Kazuchika Okada then stand tall following the match, with Larry Sweeney looking to take the championships of Jay Lethal from ringside for his clients to model before the pay-per-view. Jay Lethal's not out cold or anything, so he manages to get the titles off Sweeney. He's not going to let that happen. Sweeney just wanted a photo opportunity. He's not going to get physical with Jay Lethal, so he just enters the ring. Lethal and Eric Young then trudge up the ramp, checking on each other as Sweeney stands tall with Creed and Okada. Both men indicate their intentions to take the titles when they get the chance, as Jay Lethal's double title defense at No Surrender is confirmed by the commentators. Austin Creed will get a shot at the Global Championship, while Okada will get a shot at the X Division title. Not a fantastic segment. As I've said, this is what I expect, because all three members of Sweeney's crew are people we're trying to build up, but who we know aren't quite there yet. We then go into a backstage segment, and Bad Influence are shown in the office of Paul Heyman. Christopher Daniels not doing well without a script, but it's still a decent segment that gains heat to the storyline that's attached to it. Christopher Daniels asks Paul Heyman about wrestling's greatest tag team, before suggesting that if they don't pull through for No Surrender, it might be worth remembering that he and Kazarian eliminated two teams during last week's main event. Paul Heyman tells Daniels that he need not worry about Charlie and Shelton, and instead focus on beating the Hooligans in their match up next. He's sure that wrestling's greatest tag team will be back to 100% in time for No Surrender, but Daniels and Kazarian might want to focus on stringing two wins together before they come asking for title shots. Bad Influence aren't particularly happy to be spoken to like that by Paul Heyman, but he raises a good point. AJ Styles is then the next to be interviewed about Impact's main event, with the recently returned TNA Original more upbeat about the prospect than Wolf earlier. He's looking forward to teaming with Kurt Angle because he wants to remind the world champion just how good he is up close and personal. He adds that he may have taken time away from competition in recent months, but he never stopped training and he never stopped preparing. AJ Styles has just one thing on his mind right now, his rematch for the World Heavyweight Championship. So it's a better segment than we've seen from some of these 2-minute interviews. A 74 I'm pretty happy with, even though AJ Styles was very poor when trying to improvise dialogue, so room for improvement definitely, but that is a solid segment that advances the storyline as we go into the third match of the night. And Kazarian and Daniels do defeat the Hooligans, who are going through a bit of a rough patch themselves at the minute. Matt Morgan distracts Paul London during the match, which leaves Brian Kendrick isolated. The referee doesn't see it, and as a result, Kazarian and Daniels are able to pick up a solid victory that will rise them up the ranks in the tag team division. Everyone fairly similar in the ratings, only 6 points between the best performer and the worst performer, and I'm quite happy with that match. A 65 is decent. The hour ends with Matt Morgan joining Bad Influence in the ring, fitting given his heavy involvement in the finish of the match. They wouldn't have won it without him. All three members of the group stand tall, with the commentators once again highlighting what this group are capable of. Get them 3-on-3 and you stand a chance, but anything else and they will make the numbers count. On the outside, Brian Kendrick and Paul London look a mixture of furious with what happened and disappointed in themselves, the duo adding another defeat to their list of recent losses, but certainly a good night for Bad Influence as they stand tall to end the hour. Returning to the second hour of Impact, we see the rivals of Bad Influence as Homicide is shown in a backstage area being approached by Amazing Red and Hernandez. Hernandez recognises the surroundings and has a smirk on his face, while Amazing Red is a little bit more confused and asks why they've been told to meet him here. Hernandez smiles and says that this is their old hangout from back in the LAX days. Homicide looks to a TV screen in the corner and says that what we just saw, Daniels and Kazarian winning with the help of Matt Morgan, is why they need to work together. Homicide then extends his hand and gives a t-shirt to Hernandez. Hernandez opens the t-shirt up and sees the LAX logo. He turns to Amazing Red, who likes this, he's nodding his head, but Hernandez feels a sense of loyalty to Amazing Red, who he's been teaming with for the last few months. Homicide then produces another t-shirt, handing that one to Amazing Red. Both Amazing Red and Hernandez are now completely on board, the two of them given the opportunity to join Homicide in a reformed LAX. Homicide says that they have to do this the right way, and from tonight they all represent LAX and the entire Latino nation. And this is the segment where finally we get the turn of Homicide, a complete success, which is good, and he enjoyed the freedom of going off script in what is a solid segment to advance the storyline. This is the babyface reunion of LAX. I remember Heyman saying that he wanted a melting pot of cultures and backgrounds represented in TNA when he was talking about his potential vision for the company, which this whole series is based off. So I do like the idea that these guys can represent Latin America as babyfaces. It does also bring to mind like the DX and Beer Money face reunions, where they were kind of watered down versions, and in the case of those two I mentioned, were basically just there to try and sell some merchandise. That's not what we want LAX to be, and in some ways that's where Amazing Red seems like a bit of a strange inclusion. His image isn't quite in line with what you'd expect from LAX. He's a bit more clean cut, or he certainly has been presented as such in TNA, but I'm hopeful in the way that we book him and the rest of the group that he'll fit in nicely and it won't seem odd that Amazing Red's in LAX. Initially when I had this idea, I was a little bit concerned about, does Red really fit in with the group? But after, I've had it in mind for some months now, and I've settled on the fact that I do actually think he's a great addition to LAX and adds another dimension that means it's not just a rehash of the old tag team coming back. We then go back to ringside, where Madison Rayne is inside the 6 sides speaking with SoCal Val. Madison says that she's been promised that Awesome Kong will not make her presence known tonight, as she bemoans the last minute change of official at Hard Justice. For someone who plans and prepares their matches so meticulously, it was completely unfair on Rayne for that change to be made. She is a small details person, and even though it seems insignificant to everybody else, to somebody at the top of the game, that can make a huge difference. Trying to sound confident, but failing miserably, Madison Rayne says that the same thing won't happen at No Surrender. She'll make sure of it. She sounds terrified as she claims to be ready for her rematch. Sara Del Rey then comes out from the back and mocks the noticeable quiver in Madison Rayne's voice, telling her that there's nobody she fears in TNA, and that's the difference between the two of them. Del Rey asks if Madison wants to be the next to take up her 5-minute challenge, but Madison Rayne declines before appearing to leave the ring ahead of Sara Del Rey's match. She then turns back around and clocks Sara Del Rey in the back of the head with her microphone. Rayne leaves up the ramp as Brooke Tessmacher comes out to accept the challenge. While the microphone shot does knock her a little bit off her game, Sara Del Rey is still able to defeat Brooke Tessmacher in 4 minutes and 3 seconds with the cross arm breaker. She's a little bit frustrated that it takes 4 of the 5-minute challenge to actually put Brooke Tessmacher away, but it's understandable with what happened before the match. A 33 does cool the crowd, and it is disappointing really. After the match, having made Brooke Tessmacher tap out, a frustrated Sara Del Rey refuses to release the hold. She's got the win, but she clearly wants to send a message. ODB then jumps into the ring to intervene and calls out Sara Del Rey's actions in the process. She's basically saying that she's taken advantage of a rookie. Del Rey eventually releases the hold and sells her head from the pre-match microphone shot from Rayne as she leaves. ODB then checks on Brooke in the ring as Lacey Von Erich stands guard. This is clear progress for the two who have been bickering for months and months. Brooke and Lacey Von Erich haven't been getting along, but Lacey clearly has some sense of kinship with her tag team partner now, gains heat to ODB's storyline with those two, and Sara Del Rey, she is a heel, but really she's just been coming out, winning matches and maybe being a little bit cocky in promos. Now she's actually acting in a way that we could pretty solidly call heelish. Kurt Angle is then the latest to be interviewed as we promote this main event match, but as he talks about sharing the ring with 3 guys who are vying for his championship, he is interrupted by Samoa Joe. Joe gets straight to the point and tells Kurt that neither of those guys matter in tonight's match, it's all about the two of them. Kurt Angle steps up to Samoa Joe and the two go nose to nose, Kurt telling Joe, "I'll see you out there," before leaving the interview area, continuing to build the tension between them, although Samoa Joe not doing well in this segment. Kurt Angle superb, working without a script, and as is often the case for these 2-minute segments, it's a 71 rating. Prior to Abyss's match up next, a video package looks at the return of James Mitchell, who once again finds himself as the puppet master to his son, the monster Abyss. Last week, James Mitchell said that the unstoppable version of his monster was back, and Taz makes it clear that he wouldn't want to be the guy facing Abyss in his first match since this unholy alliance was brought back together. So just rated on either Abyss's overness or menace, I can't remember which one I went with, but the point being, we're putting over that Abyss is now more dangerous than he has been for a very long time, and he takes probably quite a bit longer than he needed to put away Caleb Connolly. He's a pretty well-known name now, actually, Caleb Connolly, but obviously 11 years ago he wasn't quite that. Abyss defeats him with a black hole slam. It's an okay match actually, and it's just a case of Abyss probably being capable of winning this match with 2 or 3 moves, but instead making sure that this guy is absolutely destroyed to send a message to Jay Lethal and the like. Jay Lethal comes out from the back to confront the monster, looking for revenge after last week's attack. He probably partly blames Abyss for him losing earlier in the night, and now he has to face those two guys at the pay-per-view. So like I said, a lot on the plate of Jay Lethal at the minute. Eric Young quickly comes out following Jay Lethal and comes between him and the ring. He doesn't want Jay Lethal, especially after their match earlier, to be getting into anything with Abyss. EY tells Jay this isn't a good idea, not when he has those 2 titles to defend in just a couple of weeks at No Surrender. Tonight has already been a terrible night for them, and Eric feels like he's partly to blame. He tells Jay Lethal that he'll go. Eric Young then begins to march down the ramp, with the commentators putting over the bravery and perhaps insanity of Eric Young. Before he reaches the ring, however, James Mitchell tells him to hold on. EY can wait until next week and he can be the next lamb to the slaughter. Eric Young accepts and both parties are happy with this agreement. Abyss will face Eric Young next week, a guy who he had a lot of matches with in reality in TNA. They even, I think, feuded over the World Championship. Unfortunately, James Mitchell looking dreadful in this segment, and as a result we lose heat to the storyline, but I have made a mistake there by scripting him, which I said I wouldn't do. I don't even remember clicking that box. Eric Young doing well without a script, but unfortunately this segment doesn't land quite as well as it could have done. Returning to TNA Impact, so we've gone to a break there, and Maro and Taz introduced footage of the major segment on last week's Explosion, as Roderick Strong laid down his conditions for joining the New Age. Previously it had seemed like there was zero chance of him even entertaining joining the group, but he had 3 things that he needed them to do to ensure his signature. 1. Jimmy Jacobs must guarantee him a match on the Bound for Glory card. 2. Roderick Strong is only required to join the group for 1 month. If he isn't happy with how that trial period goes, then he is free to leave. And 3, the biggest one, Jimmy Jacobs must face Roderick Strong in a match next week on Impact, and Jimmy Jacobs has to defeat Roderick Strong to ensure his allegiance to the New Age. Maro and Taz then discuss the segment, with Maro suggesting that Strong just wanted an excuse to get his hands on Jimmy Jacobs in the middle of the ring. Taz agrees with this, but suggests that Strong is playing a dangerous game and had better be careful, especially with Mick Foley in the mix. Anything can happen, and we've seen just how effective the New Age are as a group since they came to TNA. We then get another update from Mr. Anderson, who is currently cooling down at home, and he's shown in a bar holding a bottle in his hand as he explains for a second week he's been asked to stay home. While at home, he's read online that he's in the doghouse and has heat for more than just the attack on Jay Lethal a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, his general attitude has been rubbing the boys up the wrong way, and he gets it. His attack on Jay Lethal was no worse than 4 or 5 that we've seen in just the last couple of weeks on Impact, so there must be more to it. But nobody has said a word to him in the locker room, so if there is an issue, he doesn't know about it. He wonders, does this go deeper? Is this personal? Is this down to the fact that he had the balls to step up to Paul Heyman when nobody else has? Anderson is no stranger to upsetting the hierarchy and those who are supposed to be in charge of him, but he thought that's what Paul always liked about him. He wasn't willing to toe the line and do what everybody else was doing. Whatever it is, Anderson knows his value, he knows why TNA and Paul Heyman moved mountains to get him into TNA, and he has the contract to prove it. Anderson asks if this is a game of who blinks first before taking a swig of his drink and staring into the camera. He of course doesn't blink and the segment fades to black. He improvised well during the segment, but it is a sign probably of his lack of momentum and maybe that we've lost a little bit of his overness, that it's only a 64. I think I set this as a 3-minute promo, so it really, I'd expect it to be maybe getting into the 70s. Earlier in the year it certainly would have. His catchphrase of course helping him, throwing in the fact that he's an asshole into the segment. But we then switch focus to the main event. Mauro and Taz are talking about the blockbuster 4 top stars of the company in that match, but they hear of an incident in the back, which thankfully Jeremy Borash is already on top of. He is then shown stood beside a slumped Charlie Haas who has been found out cold, seemingly jumped from behind for the second time in the night. Of course, Beer Money attacked Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team to open the show, but Jeremy Borash has been informed that Beer Money were escorted off the premises following that initial assault and aren't currently in the building, so it couldn't have been them. This means, of course, that a second individual or group was responsible for this attack on Charlie Haas, but there were no witnesses to it at the time. Haas was left isolated as Benjamin underwent further tests regarding his potential injury, and somebody has taken that opportunity to attack him from behind. Borash adds that there are now serious doubts as to whether either member of Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team will be fit to compete at No Surrender, and with a major decision to be made, we'll get an update on next week's Go Home episode of TNA Impact. Paul Heyman obviously has a lot to think about. We all want to see that dream match of Motor City Machine Guns versus Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team, but unfortunately, it's not looking all that likely. We then go into our Impact main event, and considering who's involved, it's unsurprisingly a very good TV main event. An 80 rating I'm really happy with. It does contain basically 4 of the top guys in the company, AJ Styles and Kurt Angle versus Desmond Wolfe and his long-term rival Samoa Joe, so it's unsurprising that those two don't really get along, and their hatred for each other does play into the finish. Throughout the match they're annoying each other and bickering, but when Wolfe tags himself in, this really annoys Samoa Joe. AJ Styles spots this and goes to the outside of the ring. He waits for Wolfe to turn around and hits him with that phenomenal forearm that we're trying to get over. So Wolfe completely taking his eye off the ball, and he suffers for it as he is pinned in 15 minutes and 48, like I said. An exceptional match described by the in-game commentary. Unfortunately the commentary did let us down, but we get the crowd buzzing, send everybody home happy and gain heat to the storyline. 4 excellent performances. AJ Styles back up where we need him to be after he didn't quite reach the heights we expected against Paul London. Another good performance from Samoa Joe, and we know what to expect from Kurt Angle at this point. Following their victory, there is a nod of acknowledgement between AJ Styles and Kurt Angle before the former World Heavyweight Champion takes a microphone from ringside. Styles tells Kurt that there's only 2 of them left standing tonight, and he doesn't care what he and Joe agreed. AJ wants his rematch and he doesn't want to wait. AJ then begins to step up to Kurt Angle. He wants him at No Surrender, but he's caught from behind by Samoa Joe. Remember, Joe wasn't taken down in the finish. He locks in a Kikina clutch, chokes out AJ Styles in the middle of the ring. When AJ's body is completely limp, Joe casually rolls him to the outside, almost patronisingly saying, "This isn't about you, this is about us two." It once again comes down to Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe, champion and challenger, going nose to nose to end another episode of Impact. Kurt Angle then raises his arm in the air, reminding Joe of his team's victory tonight. Samoa Joe shakes his head and snarls, telling the World Heavyweight Champion not to worry about that. At No Surrender, Joe is gonna kill you, and we continue the storyline with another strong segment. I think we're really going to go into this pay-per-view No Surrender with a hot storyline for some of our top matches, namely Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe and the as yet unconfirmed AJ Styles versus Desmond Wolfe. Getting the crowd hotter, a positive way to end the show, and a really good episode of Impact with a 78 rating. That main event and that final segment really standing out above all else, sending people home with a positive feeling about the show and hopefully looking forward to the next episode of TNA Impact. There is of course a TNA show between episodes of Impact, and I'll just quickly go for Explosion here. We get a recap followed by ODB defeating Lacey Von Erich in a tune-up match. It's an exhibition. ODB's trying to help Lacey and Brooke Tessmacher, and getting in the ring with a veteran like ODB should do that. Lacey isn't happy to suffer another defeat. We then go into a promo from Mick Foley, who puts over the underrated Jimmy Jacobs ahead of his match with Roderick Strong on Impact. We get a recap segment from one of the major things that happened on that previous show when Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team were attacked by Beer Money, and then Haas was found out cold later in the night, and the commentators will discuss there that even on Saturday night when this airs, we're still not sure whether they will be cleared to compete. British Invasion cut a promo where they're cut off by Rhino and Jesse Neal and then defeat Rhino and Jesse Neal, so a strong win for them. We then get a promo from Hamada and Wild, two people who have just come out of tag teams and may be looking to form a new tag team with each other. Their partners have kind of gone on and done better things out of the duos, so now Hamada and Taylor Wilde facing off against the Beautiful People, and they don't quite have that chemistry yet and they are defeated. Beautiful People taking advantage of the miscommunication, the teething troubles. DNR then come out and ask them why they helped them on Impact. Love says that they didn't help them, and it'll all come clear why they came out and came after the New Age. Larry Sweeney then cuts a promo, putting over the fact that he gets results. Again, another reference to Impact. He makes big things happen for his clients, and at No Surrender, Kazuchika Okada and Austin Creed both have title shots. Roderick Strong then teams with Generation Me against Kiyoshi, Big Rob Terry and Sean Bashir. Jimmy Jacobs then comes out face to face with Roderick Strong and he smiles. It's a very, very serious, high stakes match on Impact, and he's trying to get into Roderick Strong's head. If he wins on Impact, remember, Strong is in the New Age, so that's a big thing that's not going to be on the pay-per-view. That's going to be on next week's episode of Impact, which is the go home show to No Surrender, a show that I'm really looking forward to. I just clicked onto my emails then and I've come straight out of them. I don't want to show too much because there's a lot going on with me bringing in new people and just different things, so I'm going to leave it on this screen so that I don't spoil anything. But thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll be back for the next episode, the go home show to No Surrender 2010.